Hoffaday, Zandro. Welcome to Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and today we're continuing with another in our series of interviews called Making Marianas Home, where we interview people from around the world who have come to the Marianas to live and work. And today we are interviewing somebody from Micronesia, originally, other parts of Micronesia, who has lived here really the longest out of everybody that we've interviewed so far in this series. And that is Gloria Worswick Hunter. Auntie Gloria, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, some people may be surprised to know that you're originally not from here because you've been here so long. But where were you born and where did you grow up?
Okay, I was born on Engar in Palau. Grew up there during the first 4 grades of elementary. Then 57, my parents moved to Koror because my dad got a job with the TT, Trust Territory. So about that time, we finished school on Engar and then went on to Koror and joined them. And so the rest of the time I was raised in Koror until I was 16 when I came here to Saipan.
Now, what made you decide to take that long voyage back in those days? It must have seemed like going almost halfway around the world to move from Palau. And of course, your mom is originally from Yap, correct?
She's part Ulithian and part Palauan.
I see.
Yeah.
What made you decide to move from that part of the Pacific or Micronesia to Saipan?
Well, at that time, in the early 60s and all of that, there was no high school in Palau, at least not the public school or Catholic school. So the only high school available for the boys would either be Xavier High School in Truck at the time, or Mount Carmel, or most of the kids those who went to high school got sponsors in Guam. In order to go to Guam at the time, you had to have sponsors. And so I heard about, or one of the nuns told my mom about the Mount Carmel and the Mercedarian missionaries offering 2 scholarships to 2 girls from each of the Micronesian islands. So since there were already 2 picked in Palau, 2 of my cousins were picked in Palau, and mom being half Ulithian, which is part of Yap, they said I could apply as a Yapese. And so I did, and I got it. So I came.
What did you expect before you moved here, and was it what you expected?
Well, actually, I wasn't really anxious to go to school because I was going to go to Cleveland, Ohio, and stay with my grandma on my dad's side and go to school. But then when this opportunity came up, I took it because Saipan, of course, is closer to home, and I had never been away from home and didn't want to be too far. And there was a marriage arrangement that I wasn't too crazy about getting into.
Your marriage arrangement?
Yes.
Okay.
So I decided, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I get a high school education, and I get to run away from the marriage arrangement. So when I got the scholarship, when I came here, it was very different from what I thought. I didn't really know what to think. And it was not as populated as it is now. It was, the TT government was here, so it had just moved here from Guam. It moved here in '62, so I came a year after that. So since we lived at the residence, which is at the Chalancanoa Convent, and sharing it with the nuns, some of the Mercedarian nuns, and those who were aspirants, and the residents. So we had the convent was divided into 3 sections. So we're in one, and aspirants in the other, and the nuns in the other one. It's all one building, but just separated by walls and hallways.
Did you suffer any culture shock when you moved here, or was it close enough to what you were used to that you felt comfortable?
No culture shock. It was more like homesickness, and being away from my family, and which was the worst of it all, and not being able to do a lot of things that I was able to do, like more free, go swimming when I want to, and things like that. Because it was pretty regimented, you get up at certain time in the morning, you go to mass downstairs or go to the cathedral, and so it wasn't so much a culture shock, because it's pretty much like home in a way. But
what were you expecting after you graduated from Mount Carmel? Did you think you were going to stay here or go back home, go to the U.S. for college?
No, I didn't think I was smart enough to go to college. So that I sort of erased that from my mind. Although my cousins were planning to go to College of Guam at the time, and I thought about it, but I said, well, I'm not smart enough, I'll just go home. But at that time, we graduated in '67, so home was Yap, because by then my parents had moved to Yap, because my dad got transferred he worked for the Public Works under the Trust Territory. So he was transferred from Palau to Yap in '65. So when I went home, it was to Yap. So I got there and didn't really have much plan on what to do, and so I went to work, and from work I got married, and the rest is pretty much history. So I lived on Yap until I got married.
Now, you have 4 wonderful grown children, and they were raised in Saipan. So how did you end up back in Saipan?
Well, because after Yap, when my mom passed away in '68, soon after that, my husband, who was in the Coast Guard, was transferred to New York. So we went to New York, where 2 of my kids were born. Robert and Tammy were born in New York. And then he got transferred to, 3 years later, he got transferred to Hawaii, so we moved to Hawaii. Then after that, he got transferred here, so we came here in the early 70s. And 76, I believe, he got transferred back to New York. So that's when the kids and I went and lived in Arizona, because his mom owned a shop there, an antique doll shop, and her husband was being transferred to Colorado. He's in the Army. So they needed somebody to run the shop, and I didn't really look forward to going back to New York. So it all worked out, and the kids and I lived in Arizona, Tombstone, Arizona, and until 78, when I decided to come home. And at that time, I didn't really know which would be a good place to bring the kids, especially, they were all in elementary and all of that. So I wanted them to have at least a place that I was familiar with. And since I grew up here in my high school time, I thought, well, I'll go to Saipan. So that's how I decided to come back to Saipan and brought all the kids, and we've been here ever since.
What do you think has been the greatest challenge of, if there has been any, of not being originally from here, but living here and raising your children here since they were small, and now you have great-grandchildren? Have there been challenging times related to you not originally being from here?
There were, and at the time, not being from here and all of that, and having 4 children to raise, and I don't know quite how to put this, but I was an outsider, and I was made aware of that by many people. And especially noticeable when I was appointed by the governor to the position I held until I retired. It created chaos. It was something I wasn't really that much aware of, that I'm an outsider. I knew it and all of that, but it wasn't in a negative way until that time.
Because that was a really new development, I would say, in the appointment of gubernatorial cabinet members. I believe it was Governor Tenorio.
Yes.
And he appointed you as Special Assistant for Legislative Affairs. And it was unique in the fact that I don't think there were a lot of women being appointed to cabinet positions at that time. And as we know, family connections are so important in politics here. But he chose you, and you were up for the task.
Well, it was scary because, I'm not that educated, so to speak, where, I could take any kind of jobs, especially one that big. But I figure, well, it's a challenge. And it was hard because the person who held that job before me was Vicente Santos, who is the father of the Commonwealth. He's the covenant, and he's very, very well respected man and all of that. And so with him leaving, and of course cabinet appointments are political a lot over here and everywhere. When the governor leaves, a new governor comes in, he brings his own people. I never expected it at all, being not from here and being a female, and like I said, Mr. Santos held the position. I just assume, and at the time, many important people wanted the job. You had the former mayor and former senators and people like that, were expecting to be appointed to the job. And so when I was, in fact, that was in '82, when the governor had his inaugural speech at the Civic Center, during that speech, he appointed Dave Sablan to be his budget person. He appointed Ray Guerrero to be his special assistant for administration. And he appointed me to be the programs and legislative affairs. And I didn't know that. I was at the legislature, which is where I worked. And so when Ray came and asked me, he says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "You better go over there. You just got appointed." And I thought it was a joke. And it wasn't. So it was quite a surprise.
A stir.
Yeah. And it raised a lot of stir. In fact, a lot of those who wanted the positions were, like the inner group of then the Republican Party, of course. Those who wanted the job, they wanted to quit. They wanted to switch parties because, how dare he appoints a nobody, a female, an outsider to a position when there's several important people who wanted it. And I too wondered about that. I couldn't believe it. Actually, he wanted me to take over the public information office also, the two offices. And so I had a talk with him afterwards. This was after things calmed down, and I told him, I said, I don't know how to, I'm not a journalist. Not that I didn't want, but I knew I couldn't do it. I had no knowledge in journalism or anything like that. But I figure with the legislative affairs, I could learn it because I was working at the legislature and I was aware of what the office did or didn't do and what I would like to do then. So that's how it happened, that Frank Rosario was appointed to take over the public information, and I remained with the legislative affairs. So that's how, but those, what's his name? Late Dr. V was one of the core group for Governor Tenorio.
Dr. Jose Villagomez.
Yes, I call him Dr. But Dr.
Everybody
Villa.
calls him Dr. V. Yes.
And so he talked to me. He was aware of the chaos and all of that going on after my appointment. So he talked to me and he said, "I'm going to call a meeting." And we were then at the Civic Center. And he says, "I'm going to bring it up. And I want you to say something." And I said, "I don't want to say anything." He says, "Well, we'll see." But so at that meeting, a very short meeting of newly appointed people and his core political group, Dr. Villagomez was saying, "I understand some of you are very unhappy about Gloria's appointment. And so we're going to get it out in the open so we can resolve this because you have been very important." I remember him saying, "You have been very important to our party and our group." And like they can't be dispensed, in that group. So we don't want you to be unhappy and we don't want you to switch party because of this. So we need to talk about it. And so he says, and that's when he says, "Glo, do you have anything to say?" I mean, what am I going to say? I'm the brunt of this anger and the chaos. And I said, "Well, I was very surprised to be appointed. I did not expect it." I said, "I'm still very surprised. But I do know," and I said, "so and so," and I pointed at those I knew wanted the job.
Yeah.
I said, "I do know he wants it," and of course I mentioned all the names. I said, "I think I can do it better than anybody who wants the job." Talk about modesty.
Wow.
Because I was very nervous, I was scared, I was already at the verge of crying. I said, "But if you think you can work hard and do it better, I will gladly step back." And that's when the governor said, no, we're not going to have any stepping back or anything. Let's hear everybody talk. So I said, I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to learn the job. I'm willing to do my best. But anyone who thinks they can do better, I'd be more than happy to step down. Nobody said anything. So Dr. V says, any comments? Anybody want to ask a question or say anything? Nobody said anything. And they all clapped, and the meeting is adjourned, he said. And that was it. So I got in, and I'm sure they were still unhappy for a while, but it was good because it gave me that incentive to work hard, to learn it and do better and do it to a point where, I believe that was the best.
And you actually served in that position for, I want to say, 3 terms. Am I correct?
Well, I served all the way until I retired in 2001 because I served under 2 terms for Governor Teno, and then Larry came in, so I served he reappointed me, so I served 4 years.
Correct.
And then after that, when Governor Froilan Tenorio, late Governor Froilan Tenorio came in, with him being a Democrat, I was very sure I was going to be out of the job. Of course, every time a new governor comes in, all the cabinet members have to resign. And then Governor Froilan Tenorio told me, he says, no, don't go. He says, I would like to appoint you to another position. He wanted to create like a Micronesian special assistant for Micronesian liaison. Mm-hmm. And he thought I would be good for that, which I thought was great. I was really...
Because then you'd get to travel Micronesia.
Yes, exactly. I get to go home, I get to see my family, and get paid for it too. And so he was ready to do that, but then whatever else happened, I don't know. But then the governor told me, he says, well, you're staying. He wrote me and asked me if I would remain in my position, and I said okay. I accepted it and I stayed in. And of course I knew Governor Froilan Tenorio well because he was then in Washington before he came here. He was the delegate to Congress, and so every time he came here to see the Governor Teno especially, he would stop in my office and would chat and joke and all of that. So we became kind of, he got to know me, and I got to know him. So he asked me if I would stay and work for him. So I said, okay, I will, which again created a chaotic situation within the Democratic core group, And
so then you also worked for, after Governor Froilan Tenorio, again for Governor Pete Tenorio, and then I believe the beginning of the Governor Babalta, Juan Nekay Babalta administration before you finally retired.
Yeah, and Babalta asked me if I would stay and work for him. And although I wanted to, it was already very long time, and I decided it was time that I retire and spend some time with my children.
How do you feel your time as the Special Assistant for Legislative Affairs has affected the Commonwealth?
Well, I hope it was in a positive way. I know it did with people I worked with, and it was help to them because I was always willing to help, like the legislature, of course, and legislators, and what's the name of the office that takes care of the code, updating the code?
The Law Commission.
Yeah.
I would say that not many people, especially young people, know this part of your life, that you worked for so many governors and on the cabinet. But a lot of people know you as kind of like a motherly or a grandmotherly figure. And I know I'll come to you for advice quite often. And actually, we're here in your home and you're making a salad while we're conducting this interview, because you're always trying to feed people as well. That's very Islander. In your many full years of experience, what advice could you give about how to, I would say, live a happy and peaceful life in the Marianas, which I think is bottom line what everybody would like to do. Everybody has their idea of what might make them happy or what might give them peace, but is there anything you've gleaned from your life that might be helpful to others?
Okay, the most helpful thing is have God in your life, because
it's okay.
There's going to be time that you're going to feel so alone. And I thought it was just me because of all the chaotic situation, me not being from here and all of that. Since then I found out, it wasn't just, it's not just me. Many people who are in a position like that, especially in the politics in a small island, you have to turn to someone, something. And so the reason why I said have God in your life, you always have somebody to turn to, somebody you trust, somebody who is the one. Because I'm not very good in trusting people. It takes me a long time, and I'm good at judging which one is to be trusted and who's not. But anyway, that is one of the most important. And when it comes to the job, my experience is that you have to do your best. I notice that maybe not so much now because I haven't been in office for a long time, but way back then I had employees that I could trust. I could leave and come back and know they did what they had to do. And it was sad because it was just a handful of people in the whole government that I saw or that I was involved with. And now I see more. But so that's one of the things. Do your best, not only because your boss is there or somebody is there or you want to impress somebody. Do your best with your job and be honest. Yeah, and I really think I had asked Governor Teno, may he rest in peace, I had asked him, why me? Why did he appoint me, And he usually just laughs and says, don't, you work hard anyway, just don't worry about it. But later on, with one of his close friends, he told me, he says, he trusts you, and even his family. In fact, when it was kind of confirmed, when at his funeral, his family told me that he wanted me to do his eulogy, which again created, I said, I was praying and I said, Governor, you're gone, but you're still throwing me in this fire on earth. I said, how many times do you have to throw me in this fire? Because I kept telling the family, Sophie, and I said, no, I know there's so-and-so, because those are usually done by a close family, and says, well, he wanted you, so if you don't do it, then we're just going to have it. We're not going to have it. So that's why I did it. But I think it's because, like the family member said, and his friend, he says, he trusted you, and he told them, he says, I could tell her anything and know that it's not going to go further from her. And it would never come back to bite me. He says to bite me in the butt, and which is true, and that is very important. That I would like to live with a lot of young people, especially. You know, when you are entrusted with confidence by someone, no matter what, it should not be repeated or disclosed or exposed, which is kind of sad that some close to me did not take that advice from me. But that to me is very important, because on a small island, you burn your bridges. If the first time you do that, you will not be trusted by anyone else. Your own friends would wonder, will she or he go out and repeat what I said to her in confidence? So that's what I would like to, but like I said, have God in your life, because that will keep you happy, and you don't walk around like an empty shell when you need someone that you trust always. So I found that to be very very important, and it makes me happy. Even now I run into so many difficult problems, but I'm okay, because I know He's helped me all this time. He'll continue to help me. Yeah, when nobody else would, He would.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Oh, thank you for interviewing me. Not that I but thank you. I just really want the young people to know those important things, Believe in God, be honest, do your best, and be a trustworthy person.
We've been chatting today with Gloria Worswick Hunter, a bit of her life story, being originally from Palau, and her mother also from Ulithi, and having moved here to the Marianas many, many years ago and raised her children here. Words of advice to start our new year in this Making Marianas Home series. This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.